In this lesson, we'll be showing you how to create a basic pattern, which can be adapted to be used for skirts, dresses, and more. We'll be using the measurements we took in our basic measurements tutorial. Here we're showing you the final results of this lesson. This is what we were aiming for when we showed you how the vertical and horizontal measurements aligned in the last video, and now we'll show you how they apply to the pattern. To begin, we'll need the measurement chart we filled out previously, a long ruler or yardstick, a French ruler, a curved ruler, and a straight ruler. If you don't want to purchase all of these separately, this 4-in-1 clear plastic tool is a great substitute to get you started. If you plan on making a lot of patterns, we do recommend eventually purchasing the individual metal rulers as they produce a more professional result. We'll also need a pair of straight blade scissors, a pencil, Scotch tape, straight pins, and a soft tape measure. The last supply on our list will be the pattern paper itself. We use Swedish tracing paper, which is soft and flexible, but strong enough that it can actually be sewn on as well. It's also translucent, which makes it great for tracing. Links to all of these products are posted below. The first step is to draw the back shoulder line, 1 inch from the top of the paper. This will be our top margin. Just draw 2 points 1 inch down from the top, then connect them with the long ruler to create a straight line across the full width of the paper. Next, we'll draw the front shoulder line, 1 inch below that. A very easy mistake to make when drawing a pattern is to only draw one line for the shoulder, but this doesn't give us the best fit. We'll show you why as we go along. To make it easier to keep track of all the lines, go ahead and label each one as you draw them. We're going to continue to draw the horizontal lines using the vertical measurements to find the distance between them. The next lines we'll draw will be for the bust and the waist. Now we'll want the back seam to overlap in the front a bit on the final pattern. Here's where those 2 shoulder lines come in. So as we prepare to mark the line for the bust, we'll subtract 1 inch from the neck to bust point measurement. So in this case, because the measurement we took was 10.5 inches, we'll mark a point 9.5 inches down from the front shoulder line to allow for that 1 inch difference. Keep the measuring tape right there, and now mark the line for the waist. We can find the length for this line from the neck to front waist measurement. The measurement we took from our model was 15.5 inches, so we will mark 14.5 inches down. Move the tape measure over and draw 2 more points for the bust and the waist, and now connect those points using the long ruler and label the lines. Next will be the chest line. This is halfway between the front shoulder and the bust line. Measure and draw this line the same way that we did the others. For this one, we will label it both chest and back to measurement, as it is the same line, but we'll need one for the back and one for the front of the pattern. The next step will be drawing the hip line. We'll use the waist to hip measurement to determine where to draw this line. We won't subtract anything from this length as we measured from the waist and not the shoulder. The measurement that we have is 10 inches, so we'll find that point from the waistline and draw in the hips. Now we've marked all the major horizontal lines. Now we'll use these horizontal measurements to find the vertical lines. The half of the pattern we are working on now will be for the front, and the other half will be for the back pattern. Draw the neckline coming in from the side. A general rule of thumb is to make the collar 3 inches deep and 3 inches wide. We'll draw this from the front shoulder line coming inside to 3 inches deep, then measuring 3 inches down and drawing another point there. Connect those 2 lines with a 90-degree angle, then lightly sketch them together to give a nice curve. If you have a French ruler, you can use it here to make this step a little easier. Next up will be the shoulder. Using the measurements that we took for the shoulders, which in our case is 5.5 inches, mark that inside over the front shoulder line. Then directly beneath that, draw another point 1.5 inches down. Then softly curve the shoulder line down to meet that lower point. We need this line to be sloped because our shoulders, of course, are not a straight line and we want the clothing to fit really well. Next will be the bust. We'll figure out the measurement for this line by taking the full circumference of the bust measurement we took earlier and dividing that by 4. From our measurements, this equals 9 inches, and then we will add 1 inch to that for a total of 10 inches wide. This extra inch will ensure that the clothing has a little give to it and will fit comfortably. Directly above the end of the bust line we just marked, draw a small vertical line 1 inch high. Now we're going to mark the hip width, and we're going to use the biggest measurement between the two hip measurements as our guide. In our example, the largest was 42 inches, and we want to divide this one by 4 as well, so we'll get a measurement of 10.5 inches. We'll go ahead and mark that on the hip line. Next, we'll draw the intersecting vertical lines. Begin by marking the same depth for the hips at the bottom of the pattern paper. In our example, this will be 10.5 inches deep. Then we will connect this to the hip point that we just marked and go over that line by 1 inch vertically. Then we will join this point to the bust by very lightly marking in a connecting line, which will be slightly angled. Next, we're going to mark a point 1 inch deep inside of the waistline. Now use a straight edge ruler to connect this point to the bust by drawing a short diagonal line. Now we will curve the line from the hip to the waist. Use a curved ruler to create a nice shape, drawing from the hip. Now we can really begin to see the silhouette of the body taking shape. Now we will mark in the depth on the front chest line. We want to divide the chest measurement in half, so for our model's measurements of 13 inches, we will get 6.5 inches. Now we want to add another ½ inch to this measurement, just to make sure that there's enough give in the pattern to be comfortable on the front of the body. So now we will draw in a point 7 inches deep on the front chest line. Next, use a French ruler to draw lightly from the front shoulder to the bust. This will shape the armhole. This is just to give us a rough outline for now, so don't worry if this doesn't match up exactly with the chest line. Now this completes the basic steps for the front panel, so we'll rotate to the other half of our pattern to draw the back. This will be very similar to creating the front pattern. We will start on the line for the back shoulder. We'll use the same measurement for the neckline that we used in the front, which was 3 inches deep. But this time we will mark 2.5 inches down since we're on the back part of the pattern. This is where having those two shoulder lines comes into play again. This back shoulder line will overlap slightly in the front, which creates a much better fit for the clothing because this keeps the fabric from pulling down in the back while you're wearing the garment. Sketch a gradual curve to connect those 2 points and try to bring the top part of the curve to a straight line, since that is the part that will be overlapping to the front. Now, we'll go and mark at the same measurements for the bust as we did before. Our line will be 10 inches deep again. This is based on the measurements that we took from our model earlier. Next up, we'll mark the hips in the same way that we did for the front of the pattern, using the same measurements that we've already calculated. Mark a corresponding point for the hips at the bottom of the pattern as well. We will now draw a line 1 inch above the bust line, then use a long ruler to draw a straight line from that point to the hip point which we just marked, then on to the bottom of the paper. Now, we will go 1 inch inside of the waistline and mark that spot. Connect this to the line that we just marked above the bust by making a small angle with the ruler. Then, connect this point to the hip line by using a curved ruler. The curve should be drawn above the hip, so to make this easier, just put the curviest part of the ruler above the hip line and not facing the other way. Now we will move on to the back 2 line. This is the same line that we used for the chest on the front of the pattern, but now we will use the back 2 measurement instead. The measurement that we took was 13.5 inches, and we will add a ½ inch to this, the same way that we did for the front chest. Now we will mark in the shoulders again, taking the horizontal measurement down to a gradual slope about 1.5 inches deep. Next, we'll give the armhole just a rough outline for now. This will change later in the next video after we add the darts, but for now we need it for a guideline. Now we have the basic outline for both the front and back panels, and this completes the steps for the basic pattern. In our next video, we'll be showing you how to add darts for better shaping of the clothing. This is where we'll really get into all of the tips and tricks for getting the best fit, so stay tuned, you don't want to miss that video. Thanks for watching.